They were trying to elect a strike committee from the leaders of the workers when 4 Russian tanks drove into the square, 4 abreast, and went straight for the crowd. And I remember one man got caught and was run over by a tank.
Russische Panzer stoßen vor. Werkzeuge der Gewalt gegen die Freiheit. Mit dem Mut Verzweifelter gehen die Arbeiter mit Eisenstangen und Steinen auf die Panzer los. Der Ruf nach Einheit und Freiheit erschallt noch lauter. Da peitschen die ersten Schüsse durch die Straßen.
We couldn't do anything against the tanks with our bare hands and stones. As soon as the firing started, people began to drop down, wounded or dead. The shooting broke up the demonstration. For us, the dream of freedom was over.
Soviet troops quelled the revolt throughout East Germany. At least 40 people were killed and thousands were arrested. It was the first time that East German and Soviet troops closed off the Soviet sector of Berlin from the rest of the city.
The British, the Americans, and the French were all for a quiet life. Their concern was to have security of the access routes to West Berlin, that they wouldn't get into difficulties with the Russians. That was all they were interested in. They did not want to get involved.
With the situation stabilized, East Germany's rulers set off for Moscow. Outside of the Soviet bloc, few countries recognized Ulbricht's German Democratic Republic. In the Kremlin, the ubiquitous Molotov signed another agreement with the Germans. Stalin's old cronies, Malenkov, Voroshilov, Khrushchev, Bulganin, Mikoyan, and Kaganovich decided to stick with Ulbricht. Carefully orchestrated for the cameras, the Politburo bid farewell and good fortune to their East German comrades. One person was missing, Stalin's secret police chief, Lavrenti Beria. The Kremlin claimed he spied for the West. Later that year, he was executed. In September 1953, Konrad Adenauer was re-elected as West Germany's chancellor. Adenauer wanted his half of Germany to become a partner in NATO, the West's military alliance.
We wanted a strong NATO as a defensive barrier against the Soviet Union. We also wanted to prevent any expansion of the Soviet Union into Western Europe. We could only achieve these aims if we had a West German army.
With American backing, Adenauer persuaded Britain and France to let their former wartime enemy into NATO. In 1955, West Germany was allowed to form an army. The Soviets quickly countered West Germany's admission into NATO by forming their own military alliance, the Warsaw Pact. The pact formally bound the armies of the communist satellites to the Soviet High Command. The new treaty legitimized the presence of Soviet troops in Eastern Europe. Both East and West claimed their alliances were defensive. Both prepared for war. But the Soviets wanted to reduce tension in Europe. Molotov, the Kremlin's hardline foreign minister, was ordered to negotiate an Austrian peace treaty and the withdrawal of Soviet troops.
Only Molotov spoke against it. The others were more restrained. He said, why should we withdraw? We're very comfortable there. That was his position. But most of the Soviet leaders disagreed with him and thought we had to make a goodwill gesture and start talks in Europe.
In Vienna, Molotov joined John Foster Dulles and the British and French foreign ministers in signing a peace treaty.
Österreich ist frei.
Britain, France, America, and the Soviet Union agreed to end their military occupation of Austria. In return, the Austrians promised permanent neutrality. 10 years after the end of the Second World War, the West and the Soviet Union withdrew their troops. Their departure encouraged some people to hope that one day Soviet troops might also pull out of Eastern Europe. In the Kremlin power struggle, Khrushchev had outmaneuvered Malenkov and Molotov. In 1955, he led a Soviet delegation to Yugoslavia. Khrushchev wanted to repair the damage Stalin had caused by expelling President Tito's Yugoslavia from the communist bloc.
My father, he told that these people fought against fascism. And really, it is only one country in the Europe who won itself, not by the help of the Soviet Union, itself. So he told, I have to go there, not invite Tito in Soviet Union, because we are a big country, and we have to show them that we were wrong.
Tito's Yugoslavia remained the only communist country in Europe independent of the Kremlin. Inside the Soviet Union, Khrushchev wanted to overcome the legacy of Stalinist terror and hardship. He put more resources into the production of consumer goods and housing. Thousands of political prisoners had been freed from the Gulag.
My father was a strong believer in the communism. For him it was the best life to the people. It is like the heaven of the earth. And he many times repeat that it is impossible to live in the heaven surrounded by the barbed wires.
Khrushchev used the 20th Soviet Party Congress to end the hero worship of Stalin and expose the cruelties of his dictatorship. During a secret session, Khrushchev made a speech that astounded everyone present.
When he made his speech, people in the hall started to groan. There were shouts of shame.
Stalin, Khrushchev told his audience, had ordered the imprisonment and execution of thousands of loyal communists, workers, managers, and soldiers. No one, peasant or general, had been safe from Stalin's terror.
Khrushchev himself wasn't without guilt. He had played an active part in Stalin's repressions in Ukraine and in other parts of the country. He had no moral right to speak about Stalin as if he himself was pure.
He did not say anything new for me, or for the majority of my friends. He did not say everything that needed to be said, but we were happy that at least it was said. He said it in a half-whisper, literally in secret. It was not printed in the newspapers, but came out in a leaflet read at party meetings, and sometimes outside. We used to say, "This is the beginning of truth. Truth will win."
Правда победит.
Страх, вот этот мучительный.
This fear, this tormenting fear after Stalin's death began to fade away.
Стал как-то ослабевать. Все больше и больше и больше.
After the 20th Congress, it looked as if this fear would never return.
Уже казалось, что страх вообще никогда не вернется.
Khrushchev's secret speech was perfect propaganda for the American-financed Radio Free Europe. The text of Khrushchev's speech was broadcast after the CIA received a copy from the Israeli intelligence service.
They were just repeating for 24 hours, 1 hour speech, over and over and over again. And this was to the party people who were brainwashed, were led to believe, and they did believe.